try to make me feel embarrassed. There are types I've been in name, but they tell me I'm the one with problems. They're the ones who are insane, so for those who are but won't admit it, you shouldn't be like that, cause you could be 20% cooler and 10 seconds slow. Shout it out. I'm proud to be a Brony. Yeah, yeah. I'm proud to be a Brony.
Hello mayors and gentlecolts, my fellow bronies. Welcome to I'm Brony and I'm Proud. I've got the Eosphorite with me. G'day Eos.
Hi, I'm Eosphorite. I'm an artist on DeviantArt, and I also have a website on Tumblr.
Awesome. So, how did you become a brony?
It's actually quite unremarkable, so to speak. It basically started when I noticed that one of my colleagues was actually watching the show at work, and that pretty much piqued my interest. I'm just like, oh, what are you watching? And he just said, oh, it's My Little Ponies. Pretty much just snowballed from there. It was pretty much after work at the time, and so, he just was getting his daily web surfing done at work, so...
Ah, I see. Well, cool. I mean, work tends to have the best internet, so what kind of work do you do?
Primarily concept art and a little bit of design, because the first company that I worked at was a software development company for iOS. At the time, they do a little bit of games, they do a little bit of application development and all that kind of stuff. I'm one of the guys that's in charge of the design and, the art.
Wow. How long has that been going on?
I only stayed there for about 2 years before I finally moved on. I suppose it's something that built up over time. Always had this sort of interest in art in general. So yeah, it's that typical origin story of every artist. I have enjoyed it since I was young. I suppose it's more along the lines of if you are really passionate about it, you can sort of make a career out of it. So that pretty much gave me my drive, I guess.
Awesome. As a freelancer, what kind of projects are you developing? Games and apps, that sort of thing, continuing that trend?
At the moment, it's more towards just games, I suppose, or computers, iPhone and all that. It's just a mix right now, but it's actually less on the software development part than it is for games.
So you engineer the apps as well as design them?
No. I'm just a designer, just that. The responsibilities are quite clear-cut as far as I can tell from my experiences as a freelancer. So we try not to do things that we generally have no idea what to do in.
Listeners, as much as Eosphorite would love to release details of the games and titles, unfortunately he's under confidentiality agreements. Until such time, its lips are sealed. Is that right?
Yep, unfortunately. Sorry, guys.
So let's now go into your other passion, which is illustration. Your entrance into digital art, was it sort of the similar sort of circumstances as to how you became a brony, or did it sort of happen much earlier than that?
It happened a lot earlier. I really got into art when I was maybe 7. At the time, it's the typical childhood interest, just spend time drawing and drawing and drawing without even thinking, what am I going to do 10 years after? As time progressed, I realized that I was starting to love it more and more in a sense. For the lack of a better term, I kind of get to play God, so to speak, because I get to create my own world, create my own characters, make them move the way I want to, and all that kind of stuff.
What kind of styles or what kind of characters have you been exploring since then? So during that time, have you been influenced by any particular thing, if it's been life or fandom related or even pop culture related?
In the beginning, it's more along the line of what I see in real life, and I try to sort of draw it on paper. And for a 7-year-old, it's not exactly the easiest thing to do on the planet. Moving on from there, I guess I was starting to get influenced by comics, Doraemon, and Dragon Ball, every little boy's favorite thing. From there, I think I sort of looked into more Japanese artwork from mangas, game artists, Final Fantasy, those kind of titles. I was influenced and I started growing from there and experiencing more things. I love Hina, King of Bandits, Kazuya Terada. From Japanese comics, I moved on to American ones as well. Asterisk, Bob and Bobette. Those are pretty much like comic books that I actually got to read as a child. But as I grew older, I managed to gain access to more sort of mature titles like Witchblade, Spawn, and some of the Marvel comics, those kind of stuff. For the most part, it's not necessarily what is being produced out there everywhere else. It has that sort of charm to it for me.
Fantastic. So when you started drawing, it was definitely a pencil or pen to paper approach, is that right?
Yes, I started traditionally.
What was it like when you gradually evolved into the digital space? Are you using tablet to do most of your latest work?
Purely tablet as it stands right now, although I do sometimes fall back to traditional media.
Do you know when exactly you made that leap forward, so to speak?
When I was in secondary school, Form 4,
hmm
I was using the mouse to draw back then. That's where I started drawing using the mouse. And when I entered college at 18 or 19, I got my first tablet. That's where the real transition started, I guess.
It's certainly much easier compared to a mouse, isn't it?
Definitely. Although I would say for someone who has never used a tablet during the time was really, really awkward trying to use it because texture is not even the same at all. There are ways to sort of work around it, but it's not quite the same.
Know exactly what you mean. Paper has its own life to it, and a tablet, well, it's a screen, isn't it? So you've got a pen, you've got a surface, but it doesn't exactly feel alive like paper or a canvas does it?
Yes, it doesn't quite have that sort of texture, I guess, because it's plastic or glass, depending on what tablet you're using. It tends to be a little bit too smooth, for the lack of a better word. Stylus pretty much just slide across the whole screen without much effort. For a lot of people, it does take a little getting used to, especially for me.
Know what you mean? Main Six Swag asked me, can you just do a quick drawing on your computer or phablet? So I used my Galaxy Note. My first attempt at illustration, let alone Pony, and the Galaxy Note is, far smaller than anything that's, Wacom related. You don't know how much you appreciate paper when you try something that's 100% digital.
Oh, yeah, yeah. During the transition phase, while I'm still trying to get used to the tablet, there is so many times where I just gave up and fell back to pencil paper or pen and paper. It's just so weird. Back then, I was more along the lines of being the ignorant consumer. I expected everything to work right out of the box. It didn't quite work out that way. I didn't actually sort of figure out the hardware till I was actually 1 or 2 years into college.
Fully a matter of time when tablet companies decide to put in, texture simulators. Wouldn't that be cool?
During that time, there were already tablets with some fine textures to it. The exception to that is the fact that they cost a lot of money. It's a resource that I have very limited amounts of.
I know that all too well. As Aquatic Sun put it, it's a very expensive business. Most often the costs are left to ourselves. Fortunately, we've got groups that can actually help artists through fundraising, which is really great. Artists, help is there. If you've got a DeviantArt account, add a donation link. People are more than happy to chip in, dollar here, dollar there. And if you've got 1,000 followers, you might get $100, $200. There are ways. The challenge for every artist is to be able to feel comfortable to ask for help. It's not always easy because we feel a lot of pride. We want to get there on our own accord. Now, I've stepped away officially, not from the fandom. I've been freelancing for over a decade. Recently, I just finally said no. And it sounds like to me you've actually stepped out of that situation in order to be more of the entrepreneur. Is that correct?
Well, it's more along the lines of the market here. For artists to sort of flourish in Malaysia specifically, for the most part, we have to work like crazy. There are certain positions where we do get a lot of pay, tend to give up, a few things as well. Personal time, time off, that kind of thing. And sometimes you can't even claim overtime either. It's more like sort of my rebellion against that. At the same time, also my rebellion against business owners that don't really care for their product. That's one of the reasons why I left my previous job in the beginning. My higher-ups just don't really care what we produce. You have to produce something, that kind of thing. And I can't exactly work in that kind of environment. It's just very depressing, so to speak.
And restrictive.
Yes.
The metaphor I like to use is that you're in a race, but the finishing line is constantly moving.
Oh, yeah. Fixed work environment for artists. Your work is kind of like a banker. Your work is never really done. It can be done with one project, but immediately after that, you get another project. Oh, another one, that kind of thing. There's not really much time for rest. Sometimes that's the sad reality of job environment here. I'm not sure if it's similar everywhere else, but this is pretty much my experience.
Radio can definitely relate to that. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can too.
Idea of freelancing. Just to warn everyone, just because I'm freelancing doesn't mean that it's the thing that everyone should do. Because I will guarantee that freelancing is not an easy thing to do, not by a long shot. There are times you will starve. There are times where you will be flat broke because you can't find clients or your pre-existing clients don't really need anything for that month. To really flourish as a freelance artist or a freelance whatever for that matter is that you really need to hustle when you want to build your contacts. That's the most important thing for a freelancer, your contacts. networking, networking, networking.
So true. And it's something I just not sure if I was ever successful at. People tell me, oh, keep going. Like you're saying, you may not have a job for another month. You have to become a super saver or you find yourself further in debt because you're still putting and putting more and more into your business. And there are those like yourself that are succeeding at it.
Definitely. It's not necessarily about what you can do, but what you have to do to be really good at it. So if you can find a really good, stable job, by all means, man, go for it. Don't lock yourself away by saying, oh, freelancing is where it's at. Any job is where it's at. The most important thing is that it has to suit your current needs. If you want a stable income, don't think you're going to be moving to a lot of different sites, then a fixed job would actually be more beneficial, so to speak, because at least you have that sort of security knowing that regardless if there is a project for the company, you still get paid anyway. Whereas for being a freelancer, first and foremost, you have to worry about whether you get a job for the month. Second of all, you have to worry about whether you even get paid at all. That's where contracts come in, where you can sort of set your own terms and see whether your clients agree to it. Even in the art world, I can wager that you're not going to find every single aspect of doing art for a living. I do know for a fact that some people, they prefer to draw animals, or some people, they prefer to draw humanoid characters, or some people prefer to draw environments or buildings and that kind of thing. It's more important to be able to diversify, especially when you're trying to get into the freelance arena, because as I said before, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do.
And on that subject of art, talk to us about your work on DeviantArt. How did you sort of get in there, so to speak? And what has it, in terms of growth, been like since then?
I got into DeviantArt because being the young boy I was back then, I was trying to sort of get into a clique. I mean, who doesn't, right? But after that, realized that it's not so much about getting into the clique, especially when I realized that I want to do this for a living. So DeviantArt is more of a platform for me as it stands. As for growth, though, I suppose it's more about me not being absolutely happy with what I can do. I'm constantly trying to sort of challenge myself, try something new, do things a little bit differently. Not because that I want to be avant-garde or anything like that, but it's more along the lines of what can I add to what I can do to sort of define myself a little bit more. It's always a nice thing to be able to diversify, draw things in a different technique, or paint things slightly differently or similar to a certain other artist and all that kind of stuff.
In terms of your own work, how's the feedback been from those who find out about you or even follow your work?
To state the obvious, for the most part, people who follow me seems to enjoy what I'm producing. Although I do get few really good criticisms from here and there, but as far as criticisms go, I usually ask people I know personally. Those are the people who aren't afraid of kicking my teeth in. Generally, it's quite positive.
Excellent. How's your art being sort of delivered and accepted for the template system?
By comparison to my DeviantArt, Tumblr is a little bit more quiet. It's probably because I tend to link all of my work back to my DeviantArt account. When they click on the picture, they probably get direct to my DeviantArt.
It's very helpful to do that. Direct traffic to a one spot. This show has a number of platforms, but try to direct traffic to one source to keep track of things. It's important to have a presence on as many platforms as you can monitor and control.
It does become a little bit of a chore, manage 30 different websites for the sake of exposure. Not that it's a bad thing, mind you, but it does get a little bit mundane, so to speak.
It's interesting how people find out about your work. Sometimes it's through Facebook, or sometimes it's through Twitter, or direct content, or it's through DeviantArt. So many ways. You can't necessarily predict how people are going to find out about you. As long as you can manage it, be in as many places as once. But of course, if it gets to the point where too much for one person to handle, bring a team on board. And I think that's definitely the shift when it comes to business. Depending on the size, if you've got low traffic, you can get one person to look after it. If you've got high traffic coming through, lots of comments coming through, definitely need a bit of help.
That would be the dream for me, to be able to get someone on board, manage my stuff for me. For some, it's more of a indicator that you've made it. You're in the big leagues now.
You raise an interesting point. I tuned into a Citra tuition stream and he was showing where he was at. He believes that he's at a quarter of where he is, where he wants to go before he even reaches his peak. Having said that, it's about staying humble, I guess. In the end, especially when it comes to your own work, you keep creating it the way you want to. People like it, that's great. If not, well, adios muchachos. The fandom, like My Little Pony, more and more people are still coming through, wave by wave. People just a year ago are still discovered the show, and season 5 is probably going to bring a whole new onslaught of fans into the fandom, so kind of exciting. On that note, have you seen a rise, to put it this way, numbers in response to the premiere of season 5?
Honestly, I have no idea. As far as my love for My Little Pony goes, I only just ever watch the shows and produce artwork for it. I don't usually keep track of statistics like if there is more people coming into the fandom. I mean, more is great. It's good to finally realize that more people are sort of enjoying this sort of thing. And it's humbling as well. How old's My Little Pony now? About 4 or 5 years. So it is a pretty good run as it stands right now, and you're still getting new fans for it. For the fandom and also for the people who are responsible for creating the show, they should be quite happy to realize that it's still being warmly received by people old and young, fans that are pre-existing and new ones as well.
Awesome. Tends to come in waves, doesn't it? So what are your thoughts for the future for your digital art or even your work in a professional sense? Where do you think things might be going?
Would sincerely hope to be able to make it into the AAA scene, get a few titles under my belt. That's the dream. That's the hope, really. A lot of companies are pretty much looking for those people to work for them. Even freelance artists, they just ask for, oh, you want to work for us freelance? Yeah, well, you have to have a few titles under your belt before we can even consider you. But that's it for any young budding artists out there. If you think your work is very, 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 very good, you can actually bypass that requirement. Even the requirement for a degree, really. Do keep in mind that when you're trying to bypass that, you have to blow their socks up, both figuratively and literally. It has to be that good.
I like the idea of going to a meeting with them and you literally see the socks fly off their shoes. Well, probably shoes first, then socks. If that happens, you definitely know you've done well.
Exactly. These are basically put in place to filter out people who are just not that great. Sorry to put it that way, guys. It's really there for that reason. But if your work is really good, and I'm sure that there are young artists out there that is so good, really very, very amazing people, very amazing artists, very amazing professionals, they can just bypass that completely. All they need is a little bit of training, get shown the ropes. What are the procedures, what you're supposed to do? Can you do this? Can you do that? That's that, really.
Another way of putting it, survival of the fittest, wanting the best, and all those other cliches.
It's a thing that really holds true to a lot of things. Obviously, you want the best that money can buy. You wouldn't really want something that can't really deliver on an idea that you're very passionate about. I wouldn't want that for myself either. That's why for me, as far as it stands, I have very unrealistically high expectations of myself. Where I am right now, it's good, but it's not good enough. I have to keep climbing, really. And I really, really hope that I will never peak.
It's a good point. Sort of give me food for thought where I'm at now with my own craft. For now, it's definitely bridging what I know about filmmaking and photography with the web and social media, fusing it with other media, not as far as Steven Universe, or maybe.
I have watched bits and pieces of it, certain episodes. I mean, for me, even with MLP, really, some of the episodes aren't exactly as well polished as others. So the inclination to sort of watch every single episode is not really there. As far as consideration for creating content for Steven Universe, it's definitely there. Although, as it stands right now, I'm just trying to clear my plate of stuff that I need to do first before I just move on to other things as well.
Cool. And what do you mean by clearing your plate?
I have commissions to work on. I also have several other personal pieces that I would really love to get done as well. I would prefer to sort of get most of those done before I try something different entirely, because time is a very limited commodity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, time's funny like that. Also, in terms of collaborating, when you might be doing a work here and someone's going to contribute it, and you have to sort of like, oh, where are you again? What's your time zone? So to speak. That's a funny sort of fact of life at the moment. Have you sort of faced that sort of situation?
Collaboration?
Yeah.
Not really, because I haven't actually been approached for any sort of collaboration. For the most part, if it's those open application, if you want to join, then you can come. I haven't really participated in those sort of things because, again, time is a very limited commodity for me. Either working on my freelance work or my commissions or my personal stuff, or I'm just fixing things around the house, really. That leaves me with very little time for other stuff.
It's a juggling act, that's for sure. And life happens. As much as we would like to devote full and utter attention into one thing, there's always something else attached to that, and that, and that. The list goes on. On the other side, it's a kind of a nice problem to have.
Yep. Especially when you enjoy these sort of things. I enjoy drawing. I enjoy tinkering with things, really. So you be waking up, 7 in the morning, working on all these things, and before you know it, it's 9 at night. Just wonder, where has all the time gone?
And of course, it wouldn't be great if we human beings didn't need to sleep. We just keep creating nonstop.
Goodness, that would be a dream come true.
Why sleep when you can create?
Yeah, why sleep at all? But unfortunately, we are things that need rest.
Absolutely. Good old human condition. Can't get past it.
Hmm.
Or can we?
Yeah, I mean, there are workarounds, although some of those workarounds comes with certain risks, whether you want to take that risk and whether or not you can weather that risk.
So, in regards to your art, to your work, does the weather play a factor in the process?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it does help, but for the most part, just set myself in the mood, really. I just flip a switch in my head and, all right, it's time to work.
Cool. Is it a switch alone, or is there something else that sort of gets you into the groove? Any particular kind of music as well? Or is it, like you said, just that?
Pretty much just that, getting into it. It's almost a requirement for professional artists as well. You need to be able to just get into it, even on days where you are sad or angry or just you don't really have the mood to do anything. You just have to soldier on.
Sometimes you soldier on because it's part of you says, don't stop, especially when you're working on something awesome. Does that happen sometimes where you're so engrossed in something and you just have to see it into the end, no matter what the time of day is?
Oh, always, always. It's not really done till it's done.
Awesome. Is there any recent examples that sort of illustrates that?
Well, all of my images really. I usually go through a very short phase, depending on which piece is it, but usually it goes for either 3 hours to 2 days where I hit a low with that piece because I haven't cracked a certain code in that piece yet. So I get a little bit depressed, a little bit disappointed with myself, that kind of thing. I just keep working at it now. I just bang my head against a wall a couple of times. It just solved itself. Kind of like a programmer trying to write code. They just do it, and if it works, hey, it works. You're happy, and you just keep going. Like, oh, it doesn't work. Crap. Get a little bit angry, and you just still work at it.
We are our worst critics.
Yes.
Even when the art is awesome, even when everybody else is saying it's awesome, especially on deviant art, the opportunity to receive direct feedback is great. Only when you have a work in the gallery, an art gallery, the artist can't really hear what people are thinking. Well, not yet anyway. Sites like DeviantArt, Tumblr, and other social media platforms change the game. You can definitely see the results through the fan art from the Brony fandom.
That's the thing that I have a slight problem with. Yes, everyone can be their worst critics, but I use the word they can be. There will be people who don't necessarily appreciate such things. They're just in it because I just want to draw something. And that mindset is both a good and bad thing. Depends on how you want to look at it. So I would say that it is a good thing to be your worst critic, yes, but at the same time, right, you also have to sort of look at your work and see, sort of judge where it stands, rather than say that, oh, it's bad, it'll never be good. It's better to sort of think that it's good, but I want it to be better.
And that's very healthy. We heard that listeners and creatives or potential creatives listening to the show, listening to the program, don't be so unhard yourself. Give yourself credit for doing well where you are now and continue to do that. Self-encouragement is important. If you get encouragement for others, definitely icing on the cake. It's very much vindication for what you do. Definitely start to have that here with the I'm Brony and I'm Proud podcast. We are very grateful for that. Give love where it's due, I guess. And as creators, we're very appreciative of it. In fact, it inspires us to go to do better and become better artists, become better creatives. A lot more can be done with positive encouragement, positive reinforcement than the other side. I've certainly experienced that more than my fair share. Or should I just say share? It's not really fair when that happens.
Well, me, it's more along the lines of having a healthy dose of both. From my experience as both a hobbyist and also someone who's trying to be a professional artist, by saying that, oh, it's great, maybe you can do this, sometimes they would take it for what was said initially. It's great, so I don't really have to change anything. For me, I have to look at the artwork and judge it for what it is. If the construction is weak, then for me, from a personal standpoint, I would call it out for what it is. Your sense of lighting is no good. I will say that. Being honest is one of the better forms of criticism, rather than either trying to pat them on the back or being outright toxic about it. Just be honest, really. You think that there's something wrong with this, and maybe if you really want to go that extra mile, you can try to come up with a solution that the artist can try out. So what if you try to move, like, say, maybe the legs or the eyes a little bit more to the left or right? Try that out. See how it works. But ultimately, it's still up to the artist to take those advice to heart, whether they want to even try it out or not.
Don't be afraid to experiment, especially when you've got nothing to lose. If you are making a living from it, if there's a price attached, the risk is definitely higher. But when it's not, listen to the feedback that you get. And people leaving feedback, don't be afraid to, like Eos says, to be honest, because in the end, you actually are helping the artist.
And keep in mind that just because the feedback is negative doesn't mean that so-and-so is out to get you. It's not necessarily that. Just take it for what is said, as opposed to take it for what it feels like.
Absolutely. Be constructive. Don't just say
Yes.
something's bad. Say why and be cool about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're artists, we're creatives, but we're human beings too. We feel.
Yeah, definitely. Can't really help that. It's all about being calm, I guess. Just calm down. Read it for what it is. If I say it's bad, it's just that. I'm not saying that just to spite you. Just take it for something that doesn't have emotion, I suppose. If you want to sort of try to weather it so that it doesn't sound as bad as you're reading it, be constructive. Stay calm, really. That's the most important thing. Calm down. Read the thing. You can either test it out or you can put it at the back of your head, not care. That's really up to you. The best thing you can do for yourself is at least briefly explore it, because if you don't explore it, you'll never know if it really works for you. Art ultimately is a very subjective thing. There are objective things like construction, values, lighting, and color. Those things exist and those are generally objective. But at the same time, there are certain things that you can push in a certain direction. Simply put, there are rules that you can bend.
And in some cases, break.
In some cases, but not very often.
You have to become really good before you can do that. Know the rules, play the rules. Eventually, you can bend them and break the rules. But you have to really know the rules, like the back of your hand.
Yes, definitely. When people talk about having a personal style, I tell most of these people that work on your basic things first. Try to draw realistically. Once you sort of grasp the idea of realistic drawing, then you can start sort of pushing things in a direction that you want to. These basic things are very important because they serve as a guideline. It's not a be-all and end-all for every artwork, but it can serve as a guideline so that it looks solid. Even if it's not real, it still looks solid.
And don't be too concerned about creating work that is quote-unquote real. You are setting the reality. You are the god of your creation and you do have power. Of course, there'll be some people who will try to undermine that power, but as long as you believe in your work, other people will too. It's infectious.
And a little keyword that you said there that I failed to mention is when you're creating worlds, right? You can go in any direction you want, really. Any direction you want, any art direction, colors, whatever. But the most important thing when you're creating your own world or your own characters, or you're trying to sort of create fan art for a pre-existing world, but in your own sort of style, it's also important to make it believable. It doesn't have to be real, no, but it has to be believable, because if it's not believable, right, emotional impact, the relevance of that artwork is not really there anymore. Because people just say, oh, it's just a 2D drawing. They won't say, whoa, it's like the emotion is there, the flow is there, really draws your eyes all over the image, depending on how you compose the image and all that kind of stuff. Those tiny, tiny little things that makes artwork or an animation or even a piece of music, really. It's the tiny little things that makes these things truly shine.
As a filmmaker, the art of good storytelling is so important. If you go to a film and you have been lost in the storytelling, then the film has failed. Like you're saying, with a two-dimensional piece of work, there is a story there. Someone who really responds to it really gets that. It's like, what was this character feeling? Or what was even the artist feeling with this one stroke? I mean, if someone's willing to go that far. And of course, art is open to interpretation. Sometimes it's very exciting to hear how people have interpreted, because what happens is that can fuel ideas that we haven't even thought of ourselves. Well, on that note, thank you, Eos, for being on I'm Brony and I'm Proud. It's been a real pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Take care and have a good one.
Likewise.
Bye. This has been I'm Brony and I'm Proud. Lucky Knight speaking. Thanks for listening. Remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at IBAIPshow. Proud to be a Brony. Intro and outro by Black Griffin. My Little Pony, friendship is magic.
My little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be.